Hi, again. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Michelle from Harmony Way, and this is fire cider that is just now 4 weeks old. So I started this on the 9th of March 2020, and it is now the 10th of April 2020. So this has to sit, fire cider, for a minimum of 4 weeks, and it could sit as long as 6 weeks as well. Normally I do let mine go for at least 5 or 6 weeks, and then I strain it off. But because we're in this COVID-19 situation and we're looking for all the immune help that we can muster, that's what we're going to do, is we're going to strain it after 4 weeks instead of my usual 6. So this was apple cider vinegar, a whole bunch of different herbs, things like horseradish, which I only had powder this time. So I normally use fresh. So I used horseradish powder, fresh ginger, peppercorns, mustard seeds, both brown and the yellow kind, whole peppercorns, as I said. What else did I put in? A few cloves, oregano, sage, thyme, rosemary, 2 whole lemons I chopped up, onions, garlic, and I think a few other things that I'm just not remembering, and a little touch of chili powder because I didn't have cayenne, but the chili powder had cayenne in it, so there's about 1/8 of a teaspoon for the whole thing of that. If we do cayenne in fire cider, we want to just use it lightly because a little goes a long way with cayenne, if you've ever had it. With this batch, I didn't have any hot peppers. Normally I do put hot peppers in it. I didn't have any. They're not in season right now. I didn't have any dried or frozen, so they're not in this batch. It's okay because this batch is really going to be focused on respiratory health. I don't use too much hot pepper things for myself for respiratory health. I do use more mustards and horseradish and cinnamon and ginger and garlic and things like that. That's what works well for me, as well as thyme and the other herbs that I already mentioned. So this is a whole gallon. So for this, what you need is either cheesecloth, or this is a nut milk bag, or even like old clean stockings will work as a way to strain it, because I'm going to squeeze it out. I'm going to take my rings off because I don't want to ruin them and end up having them be all stinky from the fire cider, which is very pungent. I have a strainer. If you just have a strainer, this will work, but you'll have more sediment in it. And the sediment's okay. And then I've also got this big bowl, which I think is intended for pancake batter, but it's got this bit that's a good little spout to pour it so that I can pour it easily into a jar. And you're gonna need an assortment of jars to put this in. You could wash out, if you have a big jar like this, you could wash it out and just put it back in here. And I've got a little funnel to make pouring easy. But this is a lot of fire cider, and some of this is going to members of my family. It's not all for in my house. So you could sweeten your fire cider also, as a side note. But if you have issues with diabetes or hypoglycemia, or you just don't like sweets, you avoid sweets for a variety of reasons, you don't have to. Traditionally, this is a vinegar tincture as it is on its own. When we strain it off, it's finished as it is, and we can add it to a bowl of soup before we eat it, or we could just take it as a shot, or we could use it as salad dressing. But we have another option. We can make this into more of an oxymel, which is to add honey or some other type of a sweetener to it. And this is super easy to make. Anybody can do this. Just be mindful, a couple different groups of people that want to be careful of fire cider, and you can make it for your own needs. So if you're pregnant or you're on blood thinners, some of the things in here, many of the ingredients actually in this specific one that I have made would be more blood thinning and more emmenagogue in their what they do in their actions as herbs and foods. So we want to be careful of that. But aside from that, it's safe. And I'm going to show you something else. I've got this. Now this is a red onion and thyme honey that I have made a few months ago. I made this, and it's been in the fridge. It's nice and thin. And this, if I can get it open, is what I'm going to use. This is the only sweetener for this whole gallon that I'm going to put in. We may not be putting honey in because I can't open it. Let me get a knife. But anyway, we're going to strain this off. Sorry. Wow, this is really on. Okay, so we'll just take care of that later. I'm going to take the cap off, and I'm going to show you, I don't know if you can see without me spilling, but you can see all the stuff that's in there. So I'm very carefully, this is gonna be messy, so push up your sleeves. It's also staining, it's got some turmeric in it. I'm just gonna pour this right through that strainer, right through the mesh, a little bit at a time. And I might need another bowl. This bowl is not actually big enough. Wowzers. Okay, I think we're just gonna make it. So now I'm gonna dump. You can see all this stuff that's left in here still has a lot of the vinegar in it. And I wanna squeeze every last bit out if I can. So there's a lot here already. I'm gonna put all of this in here as much as I can get out. Okay. And then, fortunately, this thing has a string that helps it tie. You can see that's a lot of liquid. And I'm just gonna squeeze this and squeeze it until I get all the liquid out as much as I can. And this is messy and it smells really strong. You may want to wear gloves when you do this, only because of the fact that if you have something like hot peppers in here, it's gonna burn if you have any sensitive skin on your hands or dry skin from washing them 8,000 times a day. So just be mindful of that. I'm really squeezing this. You can see there's still some coming out. Still coming out. Okay. This is a lot. This is a great thing. If you have kids that like to do stuff like this, you can enlist their help. This is a fun family project. This smells potent. This is a very serious, strong fire cider, but it's made for very serious times. So I'm squeezing. You can see there's still stuff coming out. Now what I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save the rest of this, and I'm going to put it in another bowl, or I'll put it in another bowl. And put that there. So now I'm done with my strainer. Get rid of that. So now you can see that I've got this really bright colored, it's kind of a yellowy color, fire cider. And I'm gonna wash my hands off. I'm just gonna give them a rinse real quick, because that was hot. And we don't want to touch our mucous membranes ever after handling something that hot. So we would not be touching our eyes. We would not be touching our nose. You're not supposed to be touching your face right now anyway, but this can make everything kind of run because it's so hot. Let's see if I can maybe get this open with a towel now. I'm going to try banging on it one more time. Otherwise, we're going to be sweetening this later. Does anyone else have trouble opening jars? Inevitably, I hand them off to anyone else, even a small child, and they get the jar open and they're like, oh, you loosened it for me. That is really on there. Well, at any rate, you would sweeten this to taste. So I'm going to put this in whenever I can get it open later. But really what you want to do is sweeten it to your taste. So if it's really too hot for you, you can take, for a gallon like this, in a big bowl like this, you can take, I would say as much as a half cup to a cup of honey if necessary, maybe even more if you really want a thick oxymel from this. And again, you don't have to sweeten it at all. It's completely fine if you put absolutely no sweetener. If you don't use honey because you're vegan or you just don't have honey or you don't want to use it, honey makes it more shelf stable. But if we were to put something like maple syrup or agave in here, we wouldn't use sugar, but something that's a liquid sweetener, even brown rice syrup, would potentially make it spoil faster. So in that case, if you want to use those things to sweeten it, ideally what you want to do is just store it the way that it is, just like this, as I've just strained it off, okay? And after that, when you're ready to use it, you're going to take about a tablespoon at a time, maybe 2 tablespoons tops, basically no more than what you'd have in a little shot glass. And you can sweeten it as you go with that. You can put a little bit of sweetener in if it helps that medicine to go down a little bit more easily. So this is not medical advice that I'm giving you. This is just practical application for how to strain off a vinegar tincture like fire cider. What I basically put in this one, how simple it is to make and use and to strain off whenever you're done with it. And then that you can, if you can get your jar of honey open, sweeten it with honey at that time. And this does not need to be refrigerated. It is shelf stable, just like regular apple cider vinegar is shelf stable. And I've seen this stay good for as much as a year, maybe even more, if it's stored in a cool, dark place. But it doesn't usually last that long because everybody in my family loves this. I actually don't use it myself. I have a sulfite allergy, but loads of other people in my family like using this for a variety of things, and it can be helpful for them to prevent, it keeps all the mucus coming out as it's in us. So it's great as a preventive measure to prevent you from getting sick in the first place, but it acts as a respiratory expectorant once you get sick. And so this is a great tool, immunity and respiratory wise, as well as good for cardiovascular health if you're not on blood thinners. That this is a great option for us to take as long as we don't have trouble with vinegar or sulfites. And again, if you've got allergies or sensitivities to any of the things that would be in it, then just omit those things. Or if they interact with the medication, just omit those things. Make it how you want. There are loads of recipes available online, including the original one by Rosemary Gladstar, but you can also find these recipes on social media, on Pinterest, and you are absolutely welcome to contact me if you need a recipe for it. You can also make it up as you go with whatever you've got on hand at this time if you've not been able to get to a grocery store recently. People sometimes use all dried materials. Mountain Rose Herbs, I think, has a couple of different recipes for fire cider that involve making instant fire cider with just dried materials and powdered materials in a pinch. But you can use all fresh materials. I used a combination for this one of both fresh and dried materials and herbs. So whatever you end up doing, I hope you enjoy your fire cider. I hope it clears your sinuses. I hope it clears all of your respiratory tract out. And it's hot, so just be aware of that. And you want to give it a shake every time before you use it because there will be a little sediment that goes to the bottom. So this is a fermented food. It's good for that reason. This is extremely good for everything that could be wrong with a virus or a bacterial infection. It doesn't hurt as long as, again, it doesn't interact with you or any medications that you're taking or any conditions that you have. So you can check with an herbalist, a naturopathic physician, or a doctor in the event that you have a concern about that. Okay, so be healthy, stay well, stay safe. I'm thinking of all of you, and I hope that this little tutorial video was helpful for you. Take care and have a great weekend.